We're making waves and keeping it real. It's Real Talk Rhody with Bekah Berger.
Well, welcome to another edition and episode, I should say, of Real Talk Rhody. Now, we're going to pivot a little bit this week, and my guest, not exactly a Bravo expert, not exactly Real Housewives of Rhode Island, but it all covers it. Andrea, I have to say this, I should say Dr. Andrea McDonnell from Providence College. You're a professor over there. First of all, thank you, and welcome to Real Talk Rhody.
Thank you so much, Bekah. It's great to be with you.
You have my dream job.
I have a dream job, yes.
You have a dream job. Please tell the Real Talk Rhody audience what you do.
So I am professor of communication at Providence College, where I teach courses in communication studies. I direct the communication program, which is in its fourth year, going into its first year, having a major at PC. But my research area is specifically focused on gossip and representations of gossip in media talk. So I look at things like how people talk on social media, on television, and in different forms of news, whether it be considered hard or serious journalism or tabloid culture.
So what you do is you give people like me a little bit more, how should I add this? You give me a little bit more substance. You kind of add some seriousness to an otherwise unserious subject, which is celebrity pop culture and gossip. So thanks for that. I have to say that first and foremost. How does one get into this field specifically and then be able to turn it into a job where you teach people about it?
Yeah, so actually, of course, I came in first as a fan. I was a fan of celebrity gossip magazines in the early 2000s. I was working at a job where I had a large number of female coworkers, and we would read the magazines all the time on our lunch breaks and on our time together. I noticed that everyone had a lot to say, and I'm a big yapper, so I always like to have a little celebrity gossip. And then I decided to go to grad school to actually think about, well, why do women want to read these magazines, even when they're so cruel and sometimes really mean to women? And how can we kind of rectify in our heads, like why we still enjoy them or how we can possibly still take pleasure in them, even when we know, I mean, these are smart women. They know that some of these messages are negative and condescending and pitting women against each other, but they still found them fun. So that's what I did. I went to school to study the magazines, and I definitely confronted along the way people who understood that they had value, but also people who think, well, wait a second, how can you really study that? But it's proven to be a really rich field, and gossip is all around us, even more so today, potentially than ever before.
I agree with you. I think because there are more ways to access gossip because like you just said, in that era. So when you're talking the magazine, so what were some of the big covers? Was that Bennifer during that time? Is that when you kind of fell into it?
Oh, yeah, it was. I started my degree in 2007. So this was really the peak of the glossy celebrity gossip magazines in the United States, height of the paparazzi. So it was Bennifer, it was Lindsay Lohan, Nicole Richie. It
Paris
was
Hilton, right?
Paris Hilton.
Let's see, Jen Aniston and Brad Pitt splitting with the Angelina Jolie of it all.
Yep. It was, Paris and Nikki Hilton wearing the Team Jen, Team Angelina t-shirts out at Kitson in LA. It was all of that. So it was just this real combination of the industry changing pre-social media, just on the cusp of social media, and then also the reality TV boom, which really brought a lot of new faces into the public eye and kind of expanded the range of types of celebrities that the public was interested in.
So I know that this has been years and years of research, and it's so hard to sort of sum it all up in a podcast. But I mean, through some of your research, you were mentioning, well, why, right? Why do we love celebrity gossip so much? Why is it specifically women who like to read kind of nasty things about other women? What did you find?
Yeah, so I found that actually gossip is a way of working through for readers, for audiences, and now on social media, where a lot of the times it's actually about evaluation, and not necessarily negative evaluation, saying, hey, she did that, or that happened to her, or, I didn't like how she was treated and I wouldn't do that, or I would. And then people actually feel validated in their own experiences and emotions. And especially when we talk to other people, like our friends and our coworkers, we may bond over the fact that we have a similar reaction. And some celebrities really give us a kind of sociable but safe way of engaging in chat, just like you do on your show, right? So, like, if we're talking about someone we both know personally, it can be a little bit risky to gossip about them, and we might feel bad about it. But we don't feel those things usually when we talk about people who are famous for a variety of reasons. We feel like they won't ever hear what we say, and we feel like their wealth and their power make them available to be talked about.
We're talking right now to, she's a professor at Providence College, Dr. Andrea McDonnell. Andrea, so you really just brought up a lot for me. I have to say this. So first of all, what I'm hearing is gossip is a common ground for a lot of us. It's how we relate to each other. It's how we kind of insert our own lives with the lives of people who are kind of unobtainable, the rich and the famous. So here's sort of what has been going on with me the last few months. In covering Real Housewives of Rhode Island, it's so different than how I've covered Real Housewives in the past, because Salt Lake City's far away, New York and New Jersey, far away enough to be able to yap about some of these housewives, reality stars. But now, because these are fellow Rhode Islanders, these are people who, I've said this on Real Talk Rhody before, people I go to the same Target as and TJ Maxx. So, it's the other kind of celebrity gossip is so safe. But with Rhode Island, it's not so safe. And we do that, I like to call it the Rhode Island whisper, where we don't usually use names because we're worried that other people will hear it. So I get what you mean when it comes to unrelated local gossip is a lot easier to consume than local gossip.
Yeah, well, the history of gossip really starts out with speech culture in oral communities. So pre-media, pre-print, you have your town crier, and people are fundamentally interested in what other people in their communities are doing and thinking and saying. I mean, I think that's just human nature. But you raise an important point about news. Proximity is something that makes an item newsworthy. So we're more interested in something usually that's happening on our doorstep than thousands of miles away. So in this case, the Real Housewives of Rhode Island, it's especially newsy gossip, but it might also be gossip that's a little bit more risky because
delicate.
Yeah, and it's a small state, so everyone knows a guy, and so you're maybe more thoughtful because you anticipate or could imagine a scenario in which the gossip comes full circle. There's that famous Norman Rockwell image of the gossip going along the telephone, and at the end of the image, the original speaker, connects with the person that already told them, and you want to make sure that you're not the one who's implicated in spreading gossip that may be untrue.
It's like the classic game, like you were just saying, of telephone. I need to get an image of that Norman Rockwell painting and put it right there, I think. So thank you for that idea. This is what I also wanted to bring up. I see it in the comment sections anytime. This used to happen all the time. When I would post something having to do with celebrity, and people would write, well, who cares? And then after a while, I thought, well, obviously, number one, I care. Number two, if you're following me, this is what I cover. So why do you think people poo-poo or look down so hard on celebrity gossip when it seems like a lot of us enjoy it?
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons. So one reason is that we have this kind of 20th century distinction, especially in the United States, that's been really driven into our psyche, this idea that serious news journalism is about the public sphere. It's about business, politics, it's about sports randomly that gets in there. But the private sphere, talk about people's lives, their emotions, their bodies, that's not quote unquote hard news. Now, an issue that I have with that is that that's also highly gendered, where women have been historically excluded from the private sphere. So where do we see women's issues, which are usually considered private issues? Where do we see those issues get discussed? So those are on daytime TV, on talk shows, on Oprah in the 90s and early 2000s. But it's also through celebrity culture, and increasingly so. Matters about how one should behave. What's women's role? Should we be a trad wife? Should we be getting cosmetic surgery? Should you divorce that guy? Should you take the promotion? These are all central issues, but they don't get worked out in the serious realm of news. Now, of course, we have this moment now where entertainment culture has completely infiltrated politics. So Donald Trump, Sean Duffy I cannot see Sean Duffy without thinking about the Real World Boston.
Yeah.
So,
True.
So it really shows that this distinction, if it was ever real to begin with, there's actually a collapse of that. But I also think there's a kind of judgmentalness that people like to feel like, oh, mass culture, if it's popular, it can't be important. But people are smarter, I think, than that gives credit to, that we really like the things we like because there's value in them. We can also like what we like and still be critical of it. It doesn't mean that we're, totally blind to the problems that it presents, but there's something that it gives us that makes those problems understandable.
Of course. Now, you said that you study the way people interact on social and the way they speak on television. I'm very interested in this. So speak on that a little bit, if you would.
Yeah. So I've done a few studies looking at how talk takes place on social media. So I examined tweets in 2016 by Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump leading up to the election during the debate cycle. And I looked at how their tweets either conformed to or defied traditional stereotypes about men and women's talk. And what I actually found was that Hillary Clinton used more stereotypically masculine speech markers and Donald Trump used more feminine speech markers, which I found was really interesting.
Isn't that a plot twist?
Yeah. Where you think, oh, emotion, exclamation mark. But that was all coming from Donald Trump, whereas Hillary Clinton was trying to appear more serious and presidential because she felt, I think, that she had to perform that role to be taken seriously as a woman. And then increasingly now I've been looking at pundit talk. So with my colleague, Adam Silver, we've been researching the way in which pundits talk to the audience, which is interesting because in a lot of ways, pundits take on the role of traditional journalists, but they also act as commentators. And there's a way in which pundits are themselves celebrities. So that's another interesting line of research.
There is so much interesting lines of research that you can go down. I mean, who is considered an expert these days? Anybody can be considered an expert these days. I think that the majority maybe of Gen Z and lower probably consume their news in such a different way than we did. They consider TikTok personalities and creators and influencers and take their word for it a little bit more than, let's say, people on the news. And have you found that in your research? I'm sure you have.
Yeah, definitely. We've seen a shift in the sources from which people get their news. Yeah. And the idea that TikTok and some random person on TikTok could be considered a valid source or a source that we prioritize over a journalist at the New York Times, for example, that might have seemed cuckoo like 10 years ago even. But now we know that these influencers have a lot of social capital, and sometimes they choose to target that towards current affairs. So that can be super influential for followers.
Do you also cover in your classes and in your research fake news and how to spot it?
Absolutely. So one area that I think is really important about communication studies is that it's really attuned to the question of media literacy. How do we kind of develop a toolkit for understanding and being able to verify and being able to understand the veracity or lack thereof in the information that we consume? So thinking about what's been called information hygiene, and this is really difficult with AI. It's becoming more and more complex, AI, deep fakes, chatbots, and, how do you kind of suss out what's real and what's not real? Sometimes it might not matter, but oftentimes I think it's easy to just scroll past, and then you are not giving it as much thought as maybe it deserves.
What are some tips and tricks you give your students in how to suss out some of this stuff that they see that is clearly fake?
Yeah, I would definitely say, where's the source? Does it have a link? Are other people also reporting this? Don't share anything before you first verify it. Uh, See what's going on in the news ecosystem before you decide that one source is the source to trust. And also if you're looking at images, I think that's a really tricky area, but paying attention, at least for the moment, there are some tells with faked images. So just really looking at the image, seeing where it came from. If you're getting information from a social media source, clicking on the source profile, looking at what else they post. Do they look kind of rando? Everybody has a kind of instinct about this. I think it's becoming harder for younger and younger people who didn't have a kind of baseline to judge against.
Younger and younger, Andrea, but also like your aunts, like aunties and uncles who are sending things in the group chat and you're like, no, auntie ate the trash again. So what are some of those tells of those images that we can tell our favorite aunts, hey, that's fake?
Yeah. Does it have the semblance of truth? Does it look like a fantasy? Is it designed to be kind of visual clickbait where it's so weird or strange or interesting that it makes you want to click on it? Subtle things like, are there two suns? Does the image have 12 fingers? Are there little things that just seem a bit off? And then you can also try to reverse image search it and see where the image came from.
That's a good tip that we don't take advantage of enough.
Yeah, definitely. So, I know older people too. And, it's easy to get into an echo chamber, regardless of your political affiliation, your demographic profile, your age, because these algorithms are really designed to give us what we like and what we are more likely to spend time with. So it does take a bit of intentionality, whether you're 82 or 22, to say, okay, I want to reach out, I want to seek out information that might not be just being delivered to me on a silver platter on these platforms.
What do you watch on TV, Andrea, when you have time to? I mean, this is sort of like, it goes along with your studies. Mm-hmm. It's what is it that you're DVRing or is on your queue?
Oh, well, I'm obsessed with The Traitors. I could do a whole show just about traitors. I love The Traitors. I love murder mysteries. I know it's not real. No one really dies, but I do love the reality TV gameplay. I actually really like the ones with ordinary people rather than the celebrities, because I just think it's fascinating to see what people will do. But relatedly, I watch a lot of true crime. I'm watching the documentary about the dentist that allegedly killed his wife right now, Trophy Wives on
What's
Safari.
That on?
Hulu.
Okay. I gotta look that up.
Yeah. But I do love, of course, I love all the throwbacks to the early 2000s. And I was thinking about our chat today and thinking about how we're having a kind of moment of Y2K.
Yes.
Revisiting, but I also feel revisionism, because there's a lot of content now, like Vice has this dark side of the reality TV show that's on, where I feel like producers are trying to, one, recognize the problems of the era, but also kind of say, hey, we would never do that now, or things have changed. But in my humble opinion, they have not.
No, I get it. I get what you mean. Like, you can say you're righting the wrongs of the past, but the past can sometimes be the present as well. I get it.
Yeah, because I just think it's morphed. I think that sort of the misogyny, the body regimentation. Okay, it's not now on toddlers and tiaras, but now it's on Instagram.
25-year-olds that are getting their lips done and the Botox at like 19.
Right. So it's just kind of scooted, and I feel
It's
like
in a different box. Same bow, different box kind of thing. So, I never thought of that because that's something I've been thinking about a lot lately, especially I have 2 young daughters and I just keep thinking, well, if I change my face, they wouldn't recognize me or they'd see old pictures and be like, "Who's that?" Well, that's mom before her new
Mhm.
nose or something. And again, that is not a criticism toward anybody. I just think that there's so much influence out there for people that you can't help but be curious about what your lips might look like or what your forehead might look like. So I'm sure that is also a big piece of the study for you.
Definitely. I mean, it's not my specific area of research, but as, a woman, I can't help but be one, the target of this kind of content, but also noticing as we move into the world around us, off of our screens, how the reality TV and social media worlds have so normalized cosmetic intervention,
Mm,
which is not to say that it's not sometimes something that makes people feel good and
true.
that it can be beneficial and help people with insecurities. But what I worry about is how pervasive and expected it becomes, so that when those women who choose, and it's especially women, let's not lie, right? If
Yes.
you choose not to conform to that or not to seek that out, then you can be actually harmed by that in your workplace, your self-esteem, and so on. So, the idea that we should, because we can change ourselves, that has become something that's highly visible on these platforms.
Yes, it is. Before we wrap up with you, you have a book coming out next year, right? So can you talk to us about that?
Yes. So I have a book coming out that's called Gossip, and it's coming out next year with the MIT Press. They have a series called the Essential Knowledge series, which is a great series of accessible books that take topics that we think we know about and break it down in an academic but fun to read format with lots of different examples. So I'm looking at the history of gossip, how it emerges, why we think it's bad, and what it can look like in our new technological era that we're moving into with artificial intelligence uh, coming out soon.
So when the book comes out, obviously we want to have you back on Real Talk Rhody. Thank you for validating me and reaffirming why I do what I do and really answering the question to the commenters, who cares? Well, a lot of us do.
Thank you so much, Becca. Great to be with you.
Thank you.